100% avid that the world was round, that anybody who thought the world was flat in 2024 is stupid, like all the evidence. But I've come around and I've done my own personal research, and I encourage everyone to do their own personal research before making a steep decision like that. But it does require uh, changing your core beliefs. A lot of things, because you've been programmed from the first thing they taught you coming out of was the world is round. First thing they taught you coming out of the womb, like, why do I need to know that? You know, but that's what they teach you. They'll be like, oh yeah, everybody in the ancient world was stupid because they thought the world was flat and you would sail off the edge of the world and fall off. But if you actually look at flat Earth theory, that's not true, and then it makes sense that the water is not just rushing off of a flat surface. So let's get into it. Paul, why is flat Earth important?
Well, yeah. So I think that the flat Earth is important because really it is literal and physical proof of a creator. The narrative of the heliocentric model, what so-called modern science has, what we're indoctrinated with, not taught. We're not taught how to reason. We're taught how to regurgitate information, and from a very, very young age. And we're given, letters, A, B, C, D, or F, in order to determine how good we are at regurgitating the information. And for inquiring minds, who think outside the box, who understand logic, who understand how to think critically, when you start taking a cursory start taking a cursory look at the so-called knowledge that has been, imprinted on you from a young age, it doesn't really hold up whatsoever. And if I told you that there was literal physical proof of a creator, and that anybody can see it and anybody can find it, you just have to look for it, well, that's a really big deal in my opinion.
So what you're saying is the reason flat Earth is important is because it's physical evidence of God, and that's the key takeaway. It's proof that God exists. Now, I agree with that because, I mean, when you look at the heliocentric model, it's like Earth is a spinning ball rotating through space, through the Milky Way, through the entire universe. It's like, where is God? Where's his throne? Where is heaven and all of that? And he's just looking at the whole entire universe that scientists and NASA have told us about. His throne's above the Earth, and the Earth is his footstool. So looking at it, like, what really drew me towards the theory, it's like mostly in recent years. It's when I was growing up, the Earth was, a round ball just rotating this way around the sun, just regular, circular motion. Now, they came out like years later with the heliocentric version, as the Earth is spinning in crazy direction along with the planets and the stars, and they're all blasting through. Yeah, it's an elliptical. Orbit, and it's just going all crazy, and everything's changed from growing up. Like, there were 9 planets, now there's only 8. They just, there were 4 oceans, now there are 5.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like, how are you going to if we're on a flat spinning ball, how are you going to discover another ocean? Right. How are there 5 oceans and there were only 4? Like, now there's 5 oceans now, and then you're telling me there's probably more continents? That can't be more continents on a flat spinning ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's funny because when if the whole point of, like, let's define what science is real quick. So science literally is doing something, some sort of action or observation, but it's whatever you're doing or seeing is observable, testable, and repeatable. So I know it's real because I see it happen. I saw it with my own two eyes. It's testable, so I can poke and prod, change the conditions of which, the circumstances of which I'm observing it. And it's repeatable, so I can do whatever those, make those alterations to whatever I'm observing, and I can get predictable outcomes based on what I observe. Observable, testable, repeatable. Now, it's kind of ironic that the point that you're making is, okay, now there's another ocean, and now Pluto's not a planet. Is it a planet? So there's something to be said for, like, well, science is ever changing. We need to recategorize these things, blah, 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 blah. So I understand the argument there. But the funny thing is, whenever I've looked into or tried to talk to people about flat Earth, or if you in your own research go and you look at, videos of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking, or as I call him, Neil Disgrace Tyson, Carl Sagan, Phil Plait, Lawrence Krauss, any one of these, high priests of science that are really just a bunch of creepy nerds, any one of them have always said, including Bill Nye, the science is settled. The science is settled. The science is settled. Well, wait a minute.
If the science is settled, how could it be changing?
Right. If we can recategorize Pluto, a whole freaking planet, as to whether or not it is a planet or not, right? I'm already getting dizzy just saying that. Then how come we can't take a look at what we were told that we never did any research on from a young age? We were just told there were 9 planets and 7 continents and the Van Allen radiation belt, and America is great for going to the moon, and we can never go back for reasons that nobody seems to understand.
Yeah.
So if you do a cursory amount of research into this topic, what you find out is nothing that they tell you, like, is even plausible, flies directly in the face of thermodynamics, and we'll talk about that. And is not observable, not testable, and not repeatable. So in the own definition of what science actually is, the round Earth theory does not align with the scientific method.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question, Paul. So how did you find out about flat Earth, and what brought you to it?
So I've always been somebody that's been a conspiracy theorist. I think that's actually a derogatory term, but
yeah, I think so too.
The way I like to say it, frame it, is I'm a truth seeker. I just want to know what the truth is. I don't really care, what is pleasant to know or what these comfortable lies are. I really want to get down to the crux of the matter and understand, what am I actually talking about? What is the reality of the situation? Because unless I know what the truth is, well, I really don't know anything, do I? So, there's a lot of, I was a great cradle Christian. I grew up in the church and everything. And, from a young age, my parents were round earthers too. They've changed their opinion now at this point too, but they didn't know any better. They were just kind of teaching me, like, the same stuff that they learned when they were growing up, right? And like we all kind of did. Yeah. It was the 90s. Nothing made sense, and we were fine with it. It made more sense than it does now. but anyway. So I really, really, really got into Neil deGrasse Tyson, Carl Sagan, and watching Cosmos. I really enjoyed that. I watched, you can go to MIT OpenCourseWare on YouTube, and you can watch MIT astrophysics videos of the lectures that Dr. Lewin would do. I watched all of them. I watched a lot of different videos about angular momentum, the way that planetary bodies behave in, a frictionless outer space environment, how gravity works. And I'm just a layman. I just, went and through my own interest studied outer space, because it's, when you get off,
fascinating.
Yeah, it's extremely fascinating. And when you get off of work, you're working an 8 to 5. What are you going to do? You're like, there's only so long I can go to the gym or whatever, and
then all the TV programs like Star Wars,
right?
And,
it piques your interest.
Everything. It's just like out there, like all the space shows, Star Trek and Orville, whatever.
Yeah.
It's all like,
it's
wouldn't
part
it be cool to go to another planet or to even go out in the solar system or make it to the moon.
And even look at like the commercialization of space travel, where a couple of years ago they had a Russian billionaire go vacation in space for a week. Now you look at Elon Musk saying he wants to put a colony on the moon and colonize Mars and all this stuff. Of course, we can't go to Mars. We've never been to the moon, and we'll get into that. But what kind of piqued my interest is just general fascination with reality and what we experience and the world we live in and beyond. And so I was in, and I still am. I didn't forget any of the lies that I learned that aren't, some of them are facts. Hot is hot and cold is cold, up is down, and up and down are different directions and all this sort of stuff. There are fundamental facts of reality, but what really kind of piqued my interest was the moon landing. And then you started looking into that and you're going, well, this seems like a hot bunch of bullcrap, because I remember I watched a video that NASA put out because back when they called it Comcast before it became Xfinity, I had the NASA channel. Like NASA has its own TV station and you can watch it, and it's the ISS and all these different publications and videos about people from NASA talking about space exploration, different technologies they're developing. And I was really fascinated by that, so I would just watch it. But every now and then it would go up, all right, here we are in the ISS, and you would see the people floating around and the lady with the big, hairsprayed hair that is moving perfectly in line with her, because if the whole thing that they were saying about the way gravity interacts or zero gravity in that case, it would look like she was underwater with her hair going in every direction. But instead what they do is they just bring their hair up, hairspray it, and then it sticks up and looks ridiculous. And I don't know who decided to do that, but it looks insane. And they look like Marge Simpson floating around out there. So like one of the first things I peeked was like, hey, if you look at the way these female astronauts are moving, they've clearly been hairsprayed. So it made me think like, so you're telling me that in zero gravity, they're sitting around there with all these chemicals going psh for 10 minutes before they start videotaping? What's the point of that? Why wouldn't they just put their hair in a ponytail and just kind of leave it, right? Yeah. So that was one of the first things, was just looking at these female astronauts' hair and going like, that's a little strange. And then what you notice is they'll have like a portion of their clothes sticking out, as if there's some sort of a pulley on it or like a bungee cord. And, they'll pull on each other's, cords as they're floating around to what's clearly green screen that almost looks like what is going on behind me with this blurry thing that I've got going on with this background. You can see that they're clearly on a soundstage, and they're pulling on each other's harnesses and ropes, trying to make sure they're staying in frame. And this is just on NASA's website. I'm watching this on their TV station. They're so careless, just assuming nobody, everyone is so asleep with their indoctrination and, being part of the matrix, if you want to call it that nobody's paying attention or cares or, has the wherewithal to kind of question stuff and watch things actively with an inquisitive mind. So then one of the programs from this NASA channel, and I think it worked in conjunction with the Discovery Channel, is there was a NASA scientist who's it's been scrubbed from YouTube, but sometimes you can find this video where they ask him, okay, why haven't we gone back to the moon? And he says, oh, well, the telemetry data of how we got there has been destroyed, and it would be very painful. The word he used was painful to return.
I saw that.
And you're going, what? First of all, so you're saying your guy's job is space exploration, and you're saying as technology has gotten more advanced over time, it's now more difficult to go to the moon?
Yeah. And so what they're saying is be hard work to recreate that technology. I mean, they're freaking building a line in the middle of the desert, a huge city. The line, right? You saw that?
Oh, yeah, they canceled that, by the way.
Oh, they did?
They did cancel it, yes. Just because it's too expensive. They couldn't do it.
And they put like $100 billion into that already?
Yeah, I'm sure it's just a money laundering operation anyway.
So, I mean, they were setting out to do that, put like a 100-mile city line in the middle of the desert. And but they're telling me they can't afford to go back to space. And then you have all these fake moon landings videos that looks like something done on an Atari,
right?
Like India and Japan, and it's just
the Indian one is so bad.
It's so terrible looking.
Yeah, and you basically look. Don't take my word for it. Go up and look the Chinese. I don't know what they're called, but their version of NASA landing on the moon, their moon landing video that they put out proudly themselves.
Yeah, just recently.
Tell me that that's real.
Yeah.
And if you're going to tell me that that's real, okay, I've got a green dog to sell you.
What's always killed me is our moon landing footage from like the 60s.
Yeah.
Like they show a video, like somebody was already on the moon recording with a pretty amazing camera to show them actually landing on the moon. And then when they left, the camera shows the ship take off, and then it pans up and it zooms out on it.
Wait, how did they do that? Did you have a remote control to do that?
I know, right? They have a remote control, and they left the camera there on the moon.
And where was that signal coming from? Was it coming from the lunar lander, or was it coming from Earth?
Yeah.
To pan that camera up.
And then they're talking to the president in the White House he was on a landline phone.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah. There's this, and how does not only that, like I think it was a German company. It might have been Kodak, actually. Anyway, I can't remember the company that made that camera that was on the moon.
Yeah.
But remember,
I think it was Kodak.
There's no atmosphere in outer space, and by NASA's own admission, they just used regular film. So that film would have gotten fried by radiation in 250 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever. It's unbelievably hot and unbelievably cold, supposedly, in outer space.
Yeah, that's what the spacesuits are for.
Yeah, which are made out of cloth, by the way.
Yeah.
And so how the hell did this film survive this whole process?
Yeah.
How? Because they didn't have anything digital. So all those pictures that they took on the moon with a regular old camera had no problem dealing with the vast, and horrible, terrifying elements of outer space, and survived all the way back down to Earth. So the way I got into this stuff was questioning just general inquisitiveness of the topic, because I was such a fanboy of outer space travel and all this sort of stuff. Then just sort of the one or two little cracks in the dam, so to speak, started piquing my interest. And then you get into the moon landing and you go, wait a minute, our technology has regressed. The actual story is insane.
Yeah.
And the technology that was used doesn't hold any mustard. Then you look up how many people died in terms of the testing, and the pilots that were like murdered, maybe, who weren't going to play ball about the operation that they were set out to do.
Yeah. The biggest thing right now, though, is the thing that shocks me is the Challenger pilots and astronauts being alive still.
Oh yeah, that's another part of NASA deception. But
it's like
they're all
crazy.
alive.
They're all alive and going by the same names.
And a lot of them are still working at NASA.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh no, I'm not that person. And then what was it? The female astronaut, and she was just like, think she was supposed to be the teacher or whatever.
Yeah.
And she's like running away from the cameras, like flipping out, like just tell the people that you're not that person. Then you know.
And NASA, people know, if you don't, but NASA is a Hebrew word for deceiver, which is like kind of like a fun fact. But if you look at the facts of, they lied to us about the moon landing, they lied about the Challenger explosion. Now they're lying to us actively about the Mars rover, and well, why would they lie about this stuff? What do they possibly gain? Well, as with all of these, truth-seeking related topics, and we're not going to say conspiracy theory related, but truth-seeking topics, they do it for multiple reasons. One, NASA collects $18 billion in tax revenue every single year.
Yeah, you know how much money we would get back if they.
Every citizen in the United States, including illegals and babies, that's $50 per citizen.
Yeah.
Okay, which doesn't sound like a lot. That's an insanely large amount of money. Okay,
Yeah.
And especially, I don't want to get $50 stolen from me every single year of my life. That's dinner, and I got better things to do than pay my money to liars who are trying to lie to me.
Yeah.
And now it's also a part of the. I think they're included under the Air Force, so it's part of the military-industrial complex money laundering and money collecting apparatus. It is a technology, what would you call it, like research group as well. They make really good rockets for the military.
Yeah, they also have a really expensive production studio and are a huge part of the film industry.
And they have the world's largest by volume indoor pool in the world, the world's largest pool, which is where they film all of the spacewalks.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just through my own interest of the topic, I started looking into it. All of these things fall apart when you start to look at them. And one of the things that really ultimately got me into flat Earth is in 2014, I moved back to Delaware, and my dad, who's a big conspiracy theory, we'll call him the truth seeker guy, he was saying, "Oh, you gotta look into this flat Earth stuff. You just gotta look into it." And I was saying, "No, there's no way it's flat. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, that's crazy. Don't even." Which is funny because I'd never even looked at the topic before. What I was really saying is nobody agrees with you, and I agree with the simple-minded people, who have never thought about this for a second, rather than taking a,
just take an hour out of
objective
your day.
look
and
and
look
stance
at
it
and be like, hey, is this a possibility?
And here's the thing: do your own research, because what you're going to find out is you can't disprove it. You can't prove the Earth is a ball, but you can easily prove that we live on a motionless, geometric, topographical plane. So every flat earther, through their own hubris, is the last convert to flat Earth. In other words, somebody challenges them and says, "Prove to me that the Earth is a ball." And you go, "Oh, I can easily do that. I've known it all my life. This is one of the fundamental things. The sky is blue and the Earth is round. What are you talking about? We live on a ball." And when you start going into, okay, well, how do I prove this? And they say, okay, you're not allowed to use anything from NASA. Because NASA is all CGI anyway. They admit that freely. And you can even look at some of the wild differences in the sizes and shapes of the continents on their various pictures of Earth that they've released over the years.
Every shot of the Earth from space is all CGI.
Yeah,
there's not one single photo of the Earth from space.
The word they use, it's a compilation. They just mix it, they edit it all together, because what they say is they take really streaky lines of the Earth from the satellites, and then they just piece them together like ribbons on top of, or pancakes, and stack them up, and that's how they get the image, right?
Yeah.
So everything by very nature of it has to be photoshopped to begin with. Okay, so the very nature of it, they don't just pull out one, they fly very far away from Earth and take a big picture of it. They've done that something like 20 times, or they say they have. And each time that they do that, the size of the continents on the planet changes, the size of the oceans changes. And if you look at the clouds, they clearly just copy paste all these different cloud formations, because it's the same cloud formation over and over and over and over again. They just copy paste because they're too lazy to go in and Photoshop it, because after all, they're government employees, so they're not very good at their job by virtue of their, who they work for. So you can use your own eyes, look at these fake images that NASA is giving you, and you can pick them apart. And when you try to disprove that the Earth is flat, you go through the 5 stages of death, because at first you're in denial. Next, you're
it's 5 stages of grief.
Or grief. Thank you. Sorry. But you
go denial, bargaining, and all that.
Anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, or whatever. I don't remember them all, but you go through those for sure. And after a while, you go. I remember the funniest thing is when I tried to debunk it, I sat there and I couldn't do it. And I'll tell you what I did and the research that I did, and you can do on your own. But I remember just sitting on my bed and just being like, I can't be into this. Like, I'm into enough conspiracy theories as it is. I can't be into this as well.
Yeah.
I don't even want this. This is too much. But ultimately, and this is my ultimate answer to the question, and I know I'm long-winded, but what got me into flat Earth, I remember praying to God. I remember this prayer, saying, God, if you're real, just please give me proof. Because I didn't like the idea of a God that would make a whole universe and have one tiny, insignificant, lame speck. And then that's where, why would you make Jupiter and all these other more amazing planets and all of these amazing formations and bigger Earths? There's Earths that are 10 times the size of Earth out there that may or may not have life. Why would you do that and just spread it out all over the universe and make it so that it's impossible for us to time travel or space travel? Excuse me. We might be able to time travel, but that's another conversation for another time. But why would you do that? It seems like and then the way that the Bible describes it is totally upside down. It doesn't make any sense, because it's clearly describing a flat, motionless plane with a covered, firmament or dome, a vault above it. Why would you why would you have such a problem? Why would God not be able to tell his creatures how he created the earth and where we live? It just seems like if he's an all-powerful God, he'd very easily be able to explain where we are, who we are, and what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And so
wouldn't the Bible have said Milky Way galaxy?
Right, exactly. As you careen through the worlds, that I have created, there would be a way that they would say it. But no, what they call the word that the Hebrew is reikia, which means disc. Yeah. Basically, it describes, and there's over 200 verses in the Bible that describe the flat Earth, but it describes it as if like you're on a record or a CD, a compact disc for my millennial people out there. You're that's what it looks like in some sense, or it looks like a human eye from the side is another explanation we've gotten, considering the clear vaulted dome above us, the firmament. But through my own stupidity or whatever you want to call it, I said, God, please give me an answer to this question. And don't you know it? He answered my prayer. So be careful what you pray for, because your prayers will get answered, whether you like it or not. And what I found is I didn't like it at first, because I was so shocked and blown away by, the facts that I was learning and the lies that I was uncovering. But ultimately, hey, when I was a child, I did childish things. When I became a man, I put away childish things. At the end of the day, why would I hold on to this comfortable lie just so some people I don't know or I don't care about, who don't care about the truth either, so I can be friends with them or have some sort of social standing? No, what I care about is whatever the truth is. You can't shame me through some sort of social ritual. I don't care. You have nothing. When you stop caring about what people think about you and you dedicate yourself to truth seeking, they can't hurt you. That you're putting on the armor of God, because the armor of God is the truth. There's an old saying, if the truth can kill it, then let it die. Okay? So if at the end of the day, if all I care about is the truth, God, please show me, it's your prayer, your mantra is show me the truth. You'll learn, your eyes will be open. And that's the people, whether or not they believe in Christ as their savior, those who believe in a higher power and who pray and set their intentions and their will towards certain topics or certain ideas, they find it, and you will find it too. That's how you climb out of the matrix, is you got to go looking for Morpheus, right? So, so that was a pretty good analogy, I think.
That's a really good analogy.
But yeah, so that's kind of how I began looking into this sort of topic, and and at the end of the day, be careful what you wish for, because you're going to find the truth at the end of the day.
Yeah, that grief part of mourning for oh man. So that it kind of wakes you up to like, I was lied about your whole life. You just realize when you start believing in flat Earth, you realize that you've been lied to from the moment you were born about every single thing in existence. Mm-hmm. And everyone in every single position of authority has lied to you, and just continues to feed you lies. So, hey, Paul, what are some interesting points of interest for flat earthers?
So when points of interest, so like, what am I looking for? How do I figure out, how do I do this research? Because if I don't want to just search a creepy YouTube video and end up on the dark web, right? Because if you're starting to get into your, sometimes you have to go to these more or less esoteric places to find esoteric information, right? And it's very difficult. We have a very funneled and siloed understanding of what the internet is and how to find information, because it all goes through Google or Bing or Yahoo, whatever, search engine that you implement. Now there's a lot of chat GPTs and AIs that they use that are basically just glorified Google, searches. And Google, any one of these that are mainstream, will misdirect you. Will say, no, this is what you're allowed to know. But we don't care what we're allowed to know. We care about finding, the truth, okay? And what we care about is it, remember, comes back to science, is it observable, testable, and repeatable, So if one of the things that I did is I went and I bought a Nikon P900 super zoom telescope camera. So you can buy this Nikon camera that can zoom in 83 times farther than the human eye can see, and it's basically it's really cool, and because you can see so far. And what I did, like the easiest proof to figure it out is, okay, well, if the Earth is round and it's a ball, and at any point in time I'm standing on the top of the ball or whatever, then that means that there's going to be some sort of declination. In other words, like, remember your math, there's a parabola, like the St. Louis Arch. There's a rolling, always rolling forward around the ball, right? The curvature, right? So if you can calculate what the rate of curvature is, which is
every like 8 miles.
It's 8. You have to account for 8 inches multiplied by the distance of the object squared. So if I'm 10 miles away, there should be like 8 inches of curvature or something like that, or of the earth, of water that's like in the way of whatever obstructing your view. So in other words, if you're 100 miles away, there's something like I think there's supposed to be like 8,000, not 8,000 feet, but it's like over 2,000 feet of curvature. If you're, I know that from memorizing the math or whatever, like this example that I had a while ago, but if you're over 50 miles away, there's something like over 1,800 feet of curvature that should be obstructing your view. And it's like a foot squared, per mile. So if you go 10 miles away, it's, 66.6 inches of curvature, very interesting number there. So if it's, and then so on and so forth, squared. So it doubles every mile you go, because remember, we're going on a slope going around. So what I did is I went and I live in Newark, Delaware. So I went to the water reserve, or in Newark, where, it's a big track where they keep the, I think it's not called the water reserve. It's called the reservoir. Sorry, I was drawing a blank there. But there's a water reservoir. It's 200 feet above sea level if you go to the top of it. And I walked to the top of it, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to take my camera up here. I'm going to zoom out to see what's the farthest thing that I can see, as far away as I can see. And what I figured out where the direction of the Salem, New Jersey power plant is. And then I don't use my GPS on my phone, and I figured from where I was about 54 miles away from the power plant. So if that's about 1,850 feet, give or take, of curvature that should be obstructing my view. Even if you account for the 200 feet that I'm elevated, okay, that should be 1,600 feet of curvature obstructing my view. So I shouldn't be able to see the power plant towers, right? The big, the
cooling towers.
The cooling towers, right? Yeah. Well, guess what I saw? You aim your telescope camera, and you can go in and see it from top to bottom, which I should not have been able to see. There's a famous photo. This guy whose last name is Winnicki, and he took pictures of the Chicago skyline from the Michigan shoreline, which is 60 miles away, and you could see the entire skyline. The tallest building is the Sears Tower, or it used to be called the Sears Tower, in Chicago, which is 1,200 feet high. Well, there should be 1,800 feet of curvature obstructing your view, and he could see all of the entire skyline. And there's 100 other examples of this happening with lighthouses, with mountain ranges that are too far away. And that's not even with infrared telescopes that have seen up to 500 miles away over the sea. So if you just buy a telescope and point it sideways, and you can see something far away, that is literal, physical, observable, repeatable, testable proof that the Earth is flat. And yes, there's obviously topography that we have to deal with. There's peaks and valleys. But if you can see something that's so far away that you shouldn't be able to see it, it's literal proof that the Earth is flat.
You're telling me if I got on a tall building, if I got on the Empire State Building here in the United States, and I had a powerful enough zoom, I could see Mount Everest in Tibet.
Well, it depends on what kind of camera you had. If you had a normal camera... Well,
I'm just saying, if I had something that had a powerful...
If you had a powerful enough camera, if it was an infrared camera and it was strong enough, yeah, you could absolutely see it. But if it's... these cameras do have limitations to them, because we still have an atmosphere. There's still dust in the atmosphere. There's still clouds. There's still, birds flying by. There's going to be stuff that's going to get in your way,
yeah,
that you can't see that far. Like, there is a limit to how far you can see. Like, the human eye can pretty much see 10 miles, but if you go up really, really, really high,
it seems like you can see a lot further.
From sea level, from ground level. The higher up you go, though, the more easy you can see. So, or the farther you can see. Excuse me. One of the proofs that I got too was from Eric Dubé's 200 Proofs the Earth is Not a Spinning Ball. I did the telescope research on my own, but whenever you fly in a plane, look out the side of the plane. The horizon rises to the eye level of the observer, right? You look out the side of the plane, it's a straight line of clouds when you go by, or once you get beneath the cloud line, It's a straight line of land or sea or whatever you're looking at.
You know, I wish I could have ever seen the view of what the plane looks like from the cockpit, but damn 9/11 and terrorists, I can't, like, I wouldn't even dare, especially with my skin tone, to go up to to go up to a cockpit and ask the pilots, "Hey, can I see out of here?" You know,
there's plenty of videos where guys will candidly walk up to a pilot and say, "So the Earth is flat, right?" And the pilots will say, "Yeah, we're just not allowed to talk about it." And why? Because the speed that a plane flies, it would have to dip the nose of the plane every 4 minutes to account for the curvature that they're flying around. And you're in that plane, so you would feel yourself go up, and then every time they dip the nose to account for the curvature.
Yeah, I can tell you, as a person who's flown a lot in the back of a plane, I'm not feeling a dip every 4 minutes.
Exactly. Think about the SR-71. This flying Mach 10. You would have to be pointing down the entire time because it's going so fast. Otherwise, it would just shoot out into outer space. The Earth isn't that big. No. We're using their own numbers that they gave us. Now, if these numbers are totally off, then that's a whole nother conversation. But then that would make my point, prove my point even more, because they're lying to us about the nature of things, right?
Yeah.
Is the Earth 10 times bigger than they say it is? Like, well, I don't think so. I think it's, put it this way, I think that there's more continents, and I think that there's extra lands out beyond the Antarctic ice wall. I mean, we can get into that if you want, but basically, yeah, there's way more continents, extraterrestrial, extra land. Terra means land. It's extraterrestrial. There's more continents out there. That's what they discovered. So but that's the next topic where I wanted to talk about. But just you can do these own researches, these own experiments on your own. Buy yourself a telescope and turn it sideways. You know go look at a boat. Go to Ocean City.
I would say
and look at a boat.
Buy a Glock and turn it sideways. Bang bang. Oh, I'm just kidding. Sorry, off topic.
All right. Well, I don't know.
Okay, no. So go to Ocean City.
Okay. We're not advocating shooting anybody at Ocean City doing flat Earth research, unless they're a pedo, in which case just shoot them.
Well, if you're not in Ocean City, but like if you're on a coastline, right, you can go out and you can see ships.
You can see the ships go beyond the horizon.
Yeah,
right?
It's beyond the horizon, and it dips out. But like, you know, it's not as like it's dipping over the horizon. You can't see it because it's dropping below.
Right, it's just going past your.
It's just going past your field of view.
Field of vision.
So
yeah.
if you took out a camera with a powerful zoom, you can zoom in and see the very top and very bottom of that boat.
Yep, exactly, and that's a proof that if I can see that boat, there's no curvature, and if I can see that power plant, there's no curvature, and if a plane doesn't dip its nose and the horizon that I observe rises to the eye line of the observer rather than slowly dipping away from my eye line, which would happen if you were on a planet or on a ball. Think Goku and on King Kai's planet. He's got a very small planet, right?
Yeah.
So imagine you're leaving that planet, you would see it get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It would do the same thing with the Earth. Doesn't matter how big the Earth is, it would go lower than your eye line, or than the eye line of the observer. You'd have to look down to see the Earth. But that's not what happens. It just rises to the eye line of the observer as far as you can see, observably proving that the Earth is flat. And so those are just some easy experiments that you can do, that's what I did. And after a while, what are you going to do? You're going to believe your eyes or some dude on TV who is
there's
trying
a lot
to
of different
feed
things
you a lie.
that, like, you know, make you question a lot of things, because there are things that, like, you know, I would see and I would just try to explain away. Like one time I went out into the sky and I saw two suns in the sky, and
really,
yeah, I saw two suns, and this was before the age of camera phones and stuff. You know, we're still using like flip phones and stuff, and texting on the Nokia brick. So
I loved it.
I saw I was in the military. I was out in the field. I saw two suns, and someone was like, "No, that's just the moon." I'm like, "No, it's too bright to be the moon." You know, it was another sun, and it was the normal sun was already dim because it was kind of like dusk. Almost around dusk time. So
where were you at?
God, I think I was in. I just remember it. It was a base. It was definitely a military base. It was either in North Carolina or in Georgia.
Okay, so you're in America though.
I was in America.
Okay, and you saw two suns. The one was dim, and there was another one behind it. I'm assuming that was brighter.
Yeah.
Almost like Tatooine in Star Wars.
Yeah, it was almost like Tatooine in Star Wars. And someone was like, and I was like, "Hey, why is there two suns in the sky? And I was a question. They're like, no, that's just the moon. It's just reflecting, or you're just seeing the reflection of the sun off the atmosphere.
Right, that's a good
You
one.
know,
Off of air.
yeah, off of air. And I'm like, you know what? And I was so ingrained in this flat Earth theory, or not flat Earth theory, but the round Earth theory, heliocentric model. I just let them explain it away for
Right.
me, and I was just like, yeah, whatever. And I hadn't thought about it for years. Then all these videos of multiple suns popping up on TikTok and stuff
Mhm.
now in like 2023 and 2024. And I'm like, I saw two suns before in my life, and I just explained it away and just thought about nothing.
And what are you going to believe? There's an old saying, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes?
Yeah,
Well, it's like, no, I believe my eyes, dude.
my
Like,
eyes, yeah.
and that's so one of the interesting things. So, what's the next question, real quick?
So, what research can people do on their own to
Yeah.
verify all this?
Yeah. So those are the experiments that you can do. But one of the interesting things that I found about this flat Earth stuff is there's a map in the UN, allegedly, but also really.
You mean the map of the UN? That's a flat Earth map?
Well, yeah, that's true. That's the logo. But
Yeah.
there's a literal map where they show like the Earth from a side view, and the way it looks is like the human eye. What is you know the on our money we have the eye. The number one TV channel in the United States, CBS, its logo is the eye.
Yeah.
Saturn is the all-seeing eye, and all this sort of stuff. It's because we live on what looks like an eye. There's the brown or blue or green or whatever eye color you have. That's the land. There is a black rock, a physical North Pole in the middle of it,
That's
called the
your pupil.
Rufus nigra, is your pupil, and then there's the ice wall around it, and then there's a lens, there's a dome above it that covers the whole thing, and then you can go inside. There's an underworld and everything. Like this, when you really start, and that's in the UN. Now that's of course people posting it on Twitter and saying, I was here, check this out, what do you think? And then there's other pictures of it that come out. So again, this is more salacious, and I haven't been outside of the Earth, obviously, so I can't tell you what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can.
But I can tell you what it looks like from above.
Yeah.
Because there are pictures of that have made their way into the internet and to the social consciousness and everything. And part of this research is finding these sort of documents, and it's all like the CIA or the military. They just release these documents, and it's just out there. Go find it.
Yeah, and I tell you, I've jumped out of airplanes before, and everything looks flat when you're up there and you're just hanging in a parachute and you can see for miles, and you don't see any curvature. Nothing looks round. But here's another thing, like firing the Javelin missile.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd have to, go through like training and fire Javelin missile. If you read the manual for it, it says, assume you're firing on a flat stationary Earth.
Right.
Flat stationary Earth. Right? Well, like, why would it say that?
Look.
I before I just used to overlook that stuff.
Right. You just go, oh, okay, sure, instruction manual.
Instruction manual. They're telling you that the Earth is flat, not moving.
And look at another one is the Coriolis effect, or lack thereof.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no Coriolis effect. And all my buddies who are military guys that are, what are you talking about? I have to take that. No, you don't. You have to take the drop. That's all you do.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of wind. If it's humid or not, that's all you take. Elevations, that's it. Because if the Earth was spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and you were shooting north to south, then in the time that it took that bullet to go, the Earth would have been moving at 1,000 miles an hour underneath of it.
Yeah.
Your target would have moved. Or if you're shooting against the grain, you're shooting east to west or vice versa, you would have to calculate something that's rotating at 1,000 miles an hour. If the Earth were rotating at 1,000 miles an hour and airplanes had to land on it, you could never land north to south. It would always have to be east to west to account for the Earth rocking around at supersonic speeds.
Yeah.
And no airplanes, no Javelin rockets, no bullets have ever taken into account the spin of the Earth. That is an absolute lie. And when you ask them, well, ask your buddy who's in the military and won't admit that he's wrong, hey, how do you calculate the Coriolis effect? And then they'll say, this is all we do. Okay.
And for those who don't know the Coriolis effect, can you explain what that is?
Oh yeah, it's basically, so if I'm on a planet that's rotating like this, and I shoot a bullet that's going up, south, from south to north, it's heading north. Well, the planet's going to rotate. We know it's rotating at about 1,060 miles an hour. So it's rotating like this. So when that bullet goes this way, well, if my target is right here and the bullet's going up, gravity doesn't make it all of a sudden make a right-handed turn and go this way. That's not how gravity works. The bullet is free to go the way it's going. So my target that's right here on this rotating planet, while this is going up, my target's going this way. So I have to shoot right to account for that in order for it to all come over here, just like a Pong game.
So basically, you have to do a little Kentucky windage and adjust your shot for a moving planet, but the planet isn't moving, so you don't have to adjust your shot because you're just adjusting for the elevation, not for the direction.
Elevation and weather conditions. That's all they really take into consideration. Yeah. Nobody shoots right to hit a target straight in front of them.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how far away they are.
Exactly.
So yeah, that was a good one. Now I wanted to we're coming up against our time here, but I wanted to give you one more that I think is the coolest thing that I've found about this research. Because I've always been somebody that really enjoyed looking at a full moon. I feel like that's like a human experience. Like, it's just really cool looking at the moon, right?
Yeah.
Well, as part of this research, I've discovered, and it's very interesting, and do your own research into it, but I've been convinced by what I've seen that the moon is a reflection of the flat Earth. So what that means is it's a map. All of the dark spots, what they call the seas, they're called seas, but everything's inverted, right? So it's actually the land. The dark spots on the moon show the land masses and the shapes of the continents. There are some continents right now that are underwater, so we don't see them. Like there's this old story of Atlantis sinking. Well, on old maps that have come out, they call it Lemuria because there was a continent in between South America and Africa. That's called Lemuria. There's another continent that they would call Mu that was in between South America and Africa on the other side, like south of India, right? Not in the Pacific Ocean rather than the Atlantic, and right next to Australia. That was called Mu, right? And then there's 4 continents at the North Pole. You can look now. We're going somewhere with this. If you look at these old maps, the projections of the continents, and then you take them and you compare them to the moon, if you zoom in on those dark spots, which you can do with if you get a super zoom camera, they 100% match up. And the way that the very interesting thing about the Earth is it's a big circle, and with an edge that's Antarctica is the ice wall. Above the ice wall, it goes all the way up is the dome, right? But the thing is, the sun and the moon only inhabit it like a third of the Earth at a time. When I say inhabit, warm. It's only warming 1/3 of the Earth, and NASA will tell you lies, but they'll also tell you a half truth. There's something called a great year, and what that is the magnetic North Pole of the Earth will shift over the course of 26,000 years and travel around the face of the Earth. And the plane, not the planet, but the plane that we live on is huge. It's right now our little spot is thawed out. And what we do, we're the Israelites in the Bible. Now, I think the Bible is literally, true, but I also think there's a lot of figurative lessons that we can learn from it as well. And we're the Israelites of the Old Testament wandering through the desert, right? Following the pillar of fire and the pillar of smoke, which is the sun and the moon. And what we're doing is we have to cross through water and go through the dry places in order to find, the water and get to the land of milk and honey. Well, what we're really doing is it takes millennia for the sun and the moon to go around the face of the Earth. Meanwhile, the parts that are on the opposite side of the world are frozen over. So they get a jubilee, just the way that wasn't intended. We don't want these people living here for this long because, let's be honest, people tend to get pissed off at each other and cause a lot of really destructive wars. So if we move them from over land and sea over a long enough period of time, it's a way to give different parts of the planet a break. It's a way to have us as this organism, this creature moving across the planet, on the move, and as a way to give the planet a break from wherever we're at. There's always going to be more land. So climate change is actually real, but the way they tell you about it is not real, because the climate is changing. And guess what? The land beneath our feet is changing, because we have to chase the sun and the moon as we go. So if you ever want to know what the Earth looks like, look at a picture of the face of the moon. And we're right now, I have it on my phone, but basically we're in the bottom right. If I remember correctly, it depends on where you're at in the world, when you're looking at the moon. So whoever sees this, I apologize. You can adjust for yourself. But right now, the way I look at it is we're in like the bottom right corner of the moon, read Earth. And what it does is it goes around clockwise, and we're moving back towards Pangea. Pangea is real. It's just frozen right now. The Germans, the Nazis, called it New Swabia, because when they got to Antarctica, they found additional land, and they just kept going beyond it, and they said, hey, wait a minute, there's a megacontinent over here, and Pangea perfectly lines the splotch on the far left side of the moon that you look at. It perfectly matches the continent of Pangea. Google it right now. What did Pangea look like? And they'll give you these artist renditions that you see in like kids' books and stuff. It's the exact same shape and size that it would be if there was a supercontinent.
So what you're saying is the moon is a reflection of the supercontinent.
No, right of now. All the continents.
Of all the continents. So it's what we're looking at right now. So if you were on the moon and you're looking down on Earth, that's what you would see.
Yes.
And if you're on the Earth looking up at the moon, those craters and dark spots are reflections of our continent off of it.
The dark spots are the continents. The craters, here's something else that you'll only see is if you get one of these telescopes and look at them. The craters are always changing. There's one that's always there, which is called the navel of the moon, and that's the big one, right? That all the lines are coming out from, and it almost looks like there's like spines coming out of it. It's really cool looking.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking
That's
about.
the only one that's there. All the other ones change every single time you look at it, because basically the moon, when it wanes and waxes, whatever it's doing, it Earth. That's a fact. And that's where the aurora borealis comes from, and it emanates underneath of us where the black hole sun is, or the dark sun, which, again, do your own research. I'm skipping over a ton of stuff right now. But
I think we're moving.
Basically, this energy source comes from the center of the Earth, and when it reflects off the dome and it hits the stratosphere and the atmosphere, those are the projections of the sun and the moon. It's just energy that comes out of the center of the Earth, because we're inside a giant machine, basically. And anyhow, when it was formed, it took a picture of the Earth for us to see, so we always know where we are. God, again, in His providence, provided this for us to understand. Not only does this thing tell time, but it also tells you where you are. It's just like our bodies do multiple things. My mouth is used for talking, but it's also used for eating. It's also used for drinking. It's also used for kissing my loved ones. Like God loves doing multi-purpose things with His creation, so, and which is cool. So why wouldn't the celestial sources do the same thing and be multi-purpose as well? Anyway, circling back around, Pangea is real. The Lord of the Rings is also based off Pangea, which is the bottom left corner of Pangea.
Middle Earth.
Middle Earth. We're in Middle Earth.
We're in Middle Earth.
We're the hobbits.
That's why we call it Middle Earth. Yeah.
So that's like a.
So that's been a fun and interesting episode here today. I do want to thank you for stopping by again, Paul, for another episode of Persaud Pod.
My pleasure.
I want to thank all my guests. All my listeners, continue to listen. We'll see if we can drop more content. It was good. We'll hopefully have you out again for another episode.
Yeah.
Paul. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Do your own research.